Okay, this is one of the most vulnerable things that I have ever done in my entire life. So, bear with me with this one. Episode 1 of Marketing Girl. Welcome to the Marketing Girl podcast, the podcast where a real life marketing girl, me, gives you the inside goss on what is happening in marketing. Okay, so let's talk about this seriously and talk about why I have created or made the decision to create this podcast. There's two reasons. The first is that it's been highly requested by students that I've taught, by employees that I've managed, and also by peers in the industry. I have been reluctant to do it because it means in the modern day, I have to be vulnerable with my career, and my career has been such a roller coaster ride over the past couple of years. I'm also someone who is very much a behind the scenes kind of person. And the thing is, to make a podcast work in 2026, you have to actually not only speak, but you also have to put yourself on camera. So that's exactly what I'm doing in this podcast. So as you can see, I am sitting on my couch at home. It's nighttime. That's why in the background you can see my neighbor's TV if you're watching this. I'm doing this podcast using my iPhone 17 Pro, and I got this Rode mic. I put a furry on it because I felt like it was kind of looked a bit weird without the furry on, but I don't actually need to put the furry on. So this is a very low budget production for now. And I wanted to keep it that way because it's a podcast and I'm keeping it, vulnerable. But maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I will in the future have a crew. I mean, look at the Grow and Transfer, that has a whole entire team behind it. So I don't know, maybe who knows what will happen in the future. But right now it's just me looking at my iPhone and talking into my Rode mic, which I put the furry on just for the sake of putting a furry on a microphone. Okay, so let's start with talking a little bit about myself, because some of you are probably wondering, who is Natalia Pereira and what right does she have to talk about these things in terms of marketing and why is she a marketing expert? Okay, let's get to it. In terms of professional credentials, I have a Master of Marketing with distinction from RMIT. I have I graduated at the top of my class. I also, in terms of business degrees, I've got a Bachelor of Business in Accounting from Monash as well. That comes in handy, actually, even though I'm a marketer. I have worked in the industry for over a decade. I've worked in agency roles. I've worked client side. I've worked for startups. I've worked for multinationals, and I've worked for everything in between. I have done digital. I've done traditional. I've done all those things in between those as well. I've adapted to emerging technologies and different ways of doing things. And I've managed a diverse range of marketers as well throughout my career. So it's been, a long journey so far. And I feel very privileged that I get to work in this industry, because a lot of people, by the time they get to this part of my career, are pretty much, out of it, and unfortunately don't make it to this part of their career. So I do feel very, very grateful that I've made it in terms of getting to the position that I'm in. And I wanted to share what it's like to be a marketer. So now that I got my resume out of the way, I guess the pitch that I give when I apply for a job in marketing, those are the things that I say. I wanted to talk about how exactly I got into marketing. because like many things, it's a bit of a convoluted story, and it's not actually atypical for people that work in my industry. Okay, so I started my professional career as an accountant. I got into accounting because I thought that I was going to help businesses to solve problems. Now, when I was younger, I was always someone that was a bit of a entrepreneur in the sense that, I tried a lot of things, and my family as well had business and things like that. But nothing fully really went right in terms of that. So I went into an accounting career thinking that that's what accountants did, that they solve these problems. But when I worked in accounting, what I realized was that it was really about analyzing historic data, and in terms of, I guess, forecasting and things, it was more around looking at what's happening and then making sure that those things continue to happen in a forecast. It was rarely about that whole why layer. So I was working in accounting. I was at a firm where I did 200 tax returns in a year. And I thought to myself, there's got to be more in this life than this. And who are the businesses I'm helping? Sure, I'm doing their tax returns, but who are the businesses that I'm actually helping? Like, I thought this could be the rest of my life. This could be the rest of my working life, because accounting is a pretty stable career. And, in the future, maybe I could be manager. But I wasn't sure if I wanted that journey. So I started exploring what else I could do. One of the things that I was thinking about was sales, because I am actually a pretty good talker. I might be shy and introverted, but I'm actually a pretty good talker. I can convince people to do a lot of things. If you've been sold something by me, you know what I mean. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I could be like a recruiter or something. And I started exploring that. I contacted some recruiters and I talked to them about what was happening with their careers, and I met some of them as well. But then I started to also think about solving business problems. And at the time, my partner at the time was doing this like web marketing business, and it looked really interesting. And they were also working in the industry as well, working as a marketing manager. And I felt like they had a pretty cool career, and I wanted to know more about that. So I asked, and I found out that it was pretty awesome. And that whole thing about solving business problems was the thing that they did as a part of their life. So I thought, okay, I've got to get into a career in marketing. So I went to one of these recruiters that I'd been talking to about getting a career in recruitment. And I said to them, actually, I'd like to get a career in marketing. Can you help? One guy said to me, you will never get a role in marketing. They said to me that I would be better off sticking in, a finance role, and I can see their reasons for that. But I'm not someone who, when someone tells me no about my career, I'm not someone that just sits there and accepts it. I thought, I really want this. There's marketers out there. How did they get these jobs? And I realized quite a lot of them actually don't have like a marketing qualification. So I started thinking, how can I get into marketing with my business degree, which I got, not that long ago. And I thought, what about if I work for an agency? I saw this role. it kind of almost came up in like a magical way, because I thought, I'm not sure if anyone in the industry is going to hire me as a marketer because I've got no experience, no qualifications in this. But this role was interesting because it was actually a hybrid role. It was for a role to do the accounts for that business, but also work as an account executive. So it was like an in-between. And for me, it was perfect because I could actually do that accounts role. It was the marketing part where there was the question mark. And that company, when I applied for the role, also put a question mark around that, because what they did was they actually made me pitch to them on why I should be hired into their company. And they did it in a very formal agency pitch kind of way, where they sent me the brief with just a couple of days spare, and there was a panel of people who I later discovered were not even that invested in this, but showed up anyway. And they really wanted to see if I could do the marketing component of that role. And I basically had to pitch why I should work there and what I could bring. Fortunately, I did convince them, and I started working agency side. So I was working agency side, but then I was also helping my partner with the web business that they were doing, because the thing was, websites were becoming more prominent. And I'd always been a creative person, not in accounting, obviously, but I'd been a creative person, and I used my skill set in creativity to work with him to design websites. So I would do the designs for the websites, and he would do the development of the websites. So we ran basically a side hustle at the same time that we both were working marketing jobs. So what I didn't expect was that the side hustle in a year became enough for us both to work in it full time. When I was in this agency, I worked with major brands, major tech brands, interestingly. So I worked with Apple, with Google, with a brand called HTC at that time. There were projects with like Microsoft and telcos like Telstra, Optus. It was really fascinating. We were also pitching for business for brands like Nintendo. It's really an interesting role where, because of the duality of my role and the fact that we were, I think, a team of 6, I had visibility across this agency because I was also kind of like the assistant to the managing director as well. And it really taught me a lot about what is expected when you pitch to large multinationals, to tech brands. It taught me what creativity is as well, because they had to, obviously deliver creative work. And back then, the budgets that these tech companies had were huge. So there was that as well. It was a really great learning platform for me. And I got to a point where I had to leave because this other thing, the side hustle, just became my full-time thing. So the side hustle basically became a business where I was a co-founder, or I guess co-director, because it had already been set up. But the structure of the business, the way we ran it, I did co-found that structure. And it lasted a good 7 years of working in it. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work with a diverse range of businesses. Digital marketing became an actual industry during that time. It's not a common thing for someone, in a marketing career to work in something that's not an industry, and then it turns into this $1 billion industry globally. And because I worked in it, from basically the start of that change, those skill sets, those foundational layers of digital marketing are some things that I can take into any marketing role that I have. I grew up in it as well. It taught me a lot about life, a lot about business, and I might go into that in another episode. But I just wanted to talk about the fact that I was doing that. I got my Master of Marketing during that time as well. And, people might think, okay, you got your Master of Marketing, you've got your own business and all that. That sounds like a great life. I was young and I made a decision that I wanted to go client side. A lot of people are shocked by that, and in another podcast I'll talk about some of the reasons why that happened. But I decided to go client side, and instead of being the owner in the business, I was now the marketing manager. And pretty much the majority of the roles that I've had, even though the title is marketing manager, I've headed the marketing departments. So I've managed, usually a team, and it's been, a lot of brand building activities quite often. And there's reasons for why I got some of these roles as well, which I will cover in another podcast too. But for the sake of this one, I worked in multiple companies in marketing manager roles, and that's where my career is at the moment. At the moment, I'm heading, marketing department, carry the title growth marketing manager, but really am the lead in that department, which is where my career has sat now for a couple of years. I feel really grateful every day to work in this industry because I get to be creative every single day. I also get to work with awesome people that have so many talents that at the moment AI and freelance, outsourcing kind of arrangements can't really fully do. I really love, the fact that sometimes a team can come together and create such amazing work. So that's a bit about myself, just from a resume kind of perspective, but also from like a career growth or career movement perspective, and where I've got to in terms of where I am now. I think, sometimes some people, they ask me like, what's next? And that's a question I think, I'm going to be answering through this podcast, because I'm not fully sure what's next as well. This podcast is so out of my comfort zone, but at the moment I feel like as a market, it's something that has to be done. So I hope, you've enjoyed this first episode, getting to know me a little bit, getting to learn about what I'm about. And I look forward to talking more in episode 2 of Marketing Girl.